All right, welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be tackling something that I think you encounter every day, but you probably don't think that much about, and that is propaganda.
Ooh.
Those messages that are out there that are designed to sway your opinion,
Right.
often without you even realizing it.
Yeah.
We've got two sources for this one that are really fascinating, and they're kind of contrasting in their viewpoints.
Okay.
So one of them outlines the technical blueprint for how you would actually build a propaganda detecting tool using natural language processing,
Wow.
NLP for short.
Just NLP. Yeah.
Um,
It's like
yeah,
it's like having a digital detective for your newsfeed.
that's a great way to put it, exactly.
Yeah.
But then the other source is much more cautious.
Right.
It highlights the potential pitfalls of such a tool, like why we need to be really careful about how it's used.
Yeah.
So today, we're not just going to explore like how to detect propaganda,
Yeah.
but also the question of should we?
Good.
And what are the implications for all of us?
Mm-hmm.
It's a deep dive into both the mechanics and the ethics of persuasion.
Really interesting.
Ah,
Because it's about empowering you. It's about empowering you to become more aware of these subtle ways that language is used to influence your thoughts and actions.
right. I love that.
Okay.
Okay, so let's dive into this NLP toolbox first.
Okay.
The source lays out some pretty sophisticated techniques. They're called heuristics
Mm-hmm.
for actually identifying propaganda.
Okay.
And one that really grabbed my attention was the idea of embedded commands.
Interesting.
So have you ever noticed how certain phrases seem to be almost designed to plant suggestions directly into your subconscious?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
when an ad says, imagine yourself behind the wheel of this car.
Oh, totally.
Then-
It's bypassing your rational mind
Right.
and appealing directly to your desires.
Yes.
That's what makes it so effective.
Right.
Yeah.
It's subtle, but it's very powerful. And it's not just in advertising either.
Mm-hmm.
Think about political speeches. How often do you hear phrases like, we must fight for, or together we can achieve?
Totally.
They're not just statements,
Yeah.
right? They're
Yeah.
calls to action.
Yeah, like-
They're embedded commands.
It's fascinating how language can be used to shape our perceptions and behaviors in such a subtle way.
Absolutely. Okay, another one that was really intriguing to me is anchoring with sensory language.
Oh, interesting.
So instead of just telling you that something is good,
Yeah.
they're going to use these vivid descriptions
Yeah.
that appeal to your senses.
Right.
And that creates a powerful emotional association.
Mm-hmm.
So think about, those commercials for luxury vacations.
Yeah.
They're not just showing you a hotel room, are they?
No, no.
They are immersing you in an experience. The sound of crashing waves, the feel of soft sand between your toes, the taste of those exotic cocktails.
Totally. Yeah, they're transporting you there emotionally, even if you're just sitting on your couch watching TV.
Exactly. And speaking of emotions, this whole emotional vocabulary thing,
Yes.
it is everywhere.
Yeah.
So we're talking about words like crisis, freedom, hope, danger.
Mm-hmm.
They're designed to trigger this immediate visceral response,
Totally. They bypass our critical thinking faculties
right?
and tap into our primal instincts.
Yeah.
So it's a powerful tool for persuasion,
Powerful stuff.
whether it's used for good or for ill.
So that's the question. How can we tell the difference, right?
Right.
Like when does clever marketing
Yeah.
cross the line into straight up propaganda? And how can we protect ourselves from being, manipulated?
Mm-hmm.
That's where a second source comes in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It raises some serious ethical questions about this whole idea of even building a propaganda detecting tool.
Well, yeah, because the concern is that this knowledge could be used to create even more sophisticated and insidious forms of propaganda.
Oh, that's
Imagine if someone used these techniques to craft messages specifically designed to exploit people's fears and prejudices.
yeah, that's a scary thought.
Yeah.
It's like giving bad actors a cheat sheet for how to manipulate people's minds.
Exactly.
So what's the solution? How do we navigate this whole complex landscape of persuasion and manipulation?
Right.
Do we just have to be constantly on guard, questioning everything we see and hear?
Well, that's certainly part of it. Developing your critical thinking skills is crucial,
Mhm.
but it's also about understanding the motivations behind these messages.
Okay.
Why is someone trying to persuade you?
Right.
What's their agenda?
It's like being a detective,
Yeah.
looking for clues,
Mm-hmm.
piecing together the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But, like, how do we do that in practice? Do we all need to become, like, experts in NLP and propaganda techniques?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. We don't need to be coding whizzes to become more discerning consumers of information. There are simple, practical strategies we can use to build our own mental propaganda detectors.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
Let's get practical. What are some of the, like, red flags that we should be looking for?
So, one of the most important things is to be aware of your own emotional reactions.
Okay.
Propaganda often plays on our fears, our hopes, our desires.
Hmm.
So if you find yourself getting swept up in a wave of emotion, take a step back and ask yourself, why?
Right.
Is this message appealing to my reason? Or is it trying to uh, bypass my logic and manipulate my feelings?
That's a great point. It's like catching yourself in the act of being persuaded
Yeah.
and asking, wait a minute, why am I feeling this way?
Yeah.
Is this genuine or am I being, manipulated?
Exactly. And remember, propaganda isn't always about pushing a blatant lie. It can be much more subtle than that. Sometimes it's about framing an issue in a particular way,
Okay.
highlighting certain facts while downplaying others, or using language to subtly shift your perspective.
It's like they're creating this carefully constructed reality tunnel
Yeah,
designed to lead you to a specific conclusion.
exactly.
So how do we spot those like subtle manipulations?
So one technique is to look for what's not being said.
Ooh, interesting.
What information is being omitted?
Okay.
Are there alternative perspectives that aren't being acknowledged?
It's like checking for blind spots. What are they trying to, keep you from seeing?
Exactly. And remember, critical thinking doesn't mean being cynical or distrusting everything you hear.
Right.
It's about being an active participant in the information exchange.
Okay.
It's about asking questions, seeking evidence, forming your own informed opinions.
So it's about taking ownership of our own beliefs
Yes.
and not letting ourselves be kind of passively swayed by the agendas of others.
Precisely. It's about empowering ourselves to be critical thinkers, not just passive consumers of information.
Wow, this is already giving me like a whole new perspective on how I process information. I'm starting to see those subtle, persuasive techniques like everywhere.
That's a great sign.
Yeah.
The more you practice these skills, the more attuned you'll become to the nuances of language and persuasion.
I'm feeling like I'm gaining some like serious mental muscle here.
And that's just the beginning. We've only just scratched the surface of this fascinating topic.
Well, before we get too carried away, let's take a quick pause. When we come back, we'll delve even deeper into the practical applications of these critical thinking skills. We'll explore how to apply these concepts to like real world examples, from advertising to political speeches to social media posts. And we'll discuss some of the ethical considerations surrounding the development and use of these powerful propaganda detecting tools. Stay tuned, deep divers. We'll be back after a quick break.
Welcome back. We're continuing our deep dive into the world of propaganda. And last time we left off talking about the power of emotions and how they can be used to influence our decisions. It's a bit unsettling, right?
It is, yeah. Like
Yeah.
it makes you realize how vulnerable we all are to these subtle forms of manipulation.
Right.
But the good news is, like, we can build up our defenses, right?
Yeah.
We can become more aware of these tactics and less likely to, fall prey to them.
That's exactly right. It's about empowering ourselves to be more critical thinkers, to question the messages that we're bombarded with every day, and to form our own informed opinions.
So how do we do that in practice? Do we need to like become experts in psychology and linguistics to like spot these sneaky tactics?
Not at all. You don't need a PhD to become a savvy consumer of information.
Okay.
There are simple, practical strategies that we can use to sharpen our critical thinking skills and build our own mental propaganda detectors.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are some like specific things we can look for?
Well, one technique that propagandists often use is called reframing.
Reframing.
Yeah, it's a way of subtly shifting your perspective on an issue by using carefully chosen language.
Okay.
So,
Can you give me an example?
sure, imagine you're reading an article about a controversial government policy.
Huh.
Instead of presenting both sides of the argument objectively, the author might use language that frames the issue in a way that favors their own perspective.
Mm-hmm.
They might use positive words to describe their preferred outcome
Okay.
and negative words to describe the opposing viewpoint.
So it's like they're trying to paint a picture that supports their agenda,
Yeah.
even if it's not a completely accurate representation of reality.
Exactly. They're using language to create a biased narrative.
Wow.
And here's the thing. They're not necessarily lying. They're just selectively presenting information and using language to shape your perception of it.
That's sneaky.
Yeah.
So how do we spot this like kind of reframing?
Yeah.
What are some red flags we should be looking for?
So one thing to pay attention to is the use of emotionally charged language.
Okay.
Are they using words that are designed to evoke a strong emotional response,
Right.
either positive or negative?
Right.
If so, why?
Yeah.
Are they trying to appeal to your reason,
Right.
or are they trying to bypass your logic and manipulate your feelings?
It's like when you see a political ad that's full of fear-mongering or like patriotic imagery.
Right.
They're not really giving you any like concrete information. They're just trying to get you riled up.
Exactly. And another thing to look for is the use of generalizations and sweeping statements.
Okay.
Are they making broad claims without providing any evidence to back them up?
Okay.
Are they using words like always, never, everyone, or no one? These are often signs that they're trying to oversimplify a complex issue
Right.
and present a one-sided perspective.
It's like they're trying to create a false sense of certainty, like to make you think that their view is the only, valid one.
Right. And another tactic they might use is to create a false dichotomy.
False dichotomy.
Yeah, presenting you with only two options when there might be many others.
Okay.
So they might say something like, you're either with us or against us, when in reality there might be a whole spectrum of viewpoints.
So it's about recognizing that the world is rarely black and white. There's usually, shades of gray.
Yeah.
And we need to be aware of those nuances.
Absolutely. Critical thinking is about being able to see beyond the surface, to question assumptions, to consider multiple perspectives.
I'm starting to see how these like critical thinking skills can be applied to so many different areas of our lives.
Right.
From evaluating news articles to like making purchasing decisions to even navigating like personal relationships.
That's exactly right. It's about becoming more aware of the ways in which we're being influenced, both consciously and unconsciously,
Mm-hmm.
and taking control of our own thoughts and actions.
Yeah, I'm feeling empowered already. But before we get too carried away, let's take another quick break. When we come back, we'll explore some even more advanced techniques for dissecting propaganda and discuss how these skills can help us navigate the increasingly complex world of information. Stay with us, Deep Divers. We'll be back in a flash. Welcome back, Deep Divers. We are knee-deep in this exploration of propaganda, and honestly, I'm already starting to see the world a little differently. It's like someone just flipped on a persuasion detector in my brain or something.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
The more we understand these techniques, the less likely we are to, be swayed by them without even realizing it.
Right. Okay, so before the break, we were talking about reframing, right?
Mm-hmm.
How these subtle language choices can, like, totally change how we see an issue. But the source we're looking at, it also digs into, like, how this propaganda detecting tool would actually work, like, in practice.
Yeah. It gets into the nitty-gritty of testing and refining the tool, which is crucial.
Right.
I mean, you wouldn't trust a medical diagnosis from an untested device, right?
No, absolutely not. So how do they make sure that this thing's actually accurate?
Well, they propose using what's called a benchmark data set.
Okay.
Think of it like a giant library of texts that experts have already analyzed and labeled for different types of propaganda.
So it's like a training ground for the tool. It learns to spot the patterns by comparing like its analysis to what the experts have already identified.
Exactly. And to measure how well the tool is doing, they use something called accuracy metrics.
Okay.
And one of these is the F1 score, which essentially tells you how well the tool's results match up with those expert labels.
Gotcha. So like a high F1 score means, you can be more confident that the tool is actually, picking up on real instances of propaganda.
Precisely. But it's not a one-and-done process. The source really emphasizes the importance of ongoing feedback and refinement.
Right.
They suggest having users flag potential errors,
Okay.
like cases where the tool might misinterpret something as propaganda
Right, right.
or miss something that's actually sneaky.
So it's like a continuous learning loop. The more data the tool gets, like the smarter and more accurate it becomes.
Exactly. And they also talk about having a team of experts review the tool's performance, fine-tuning the algorithms, adjusting how much weight is given to different heuristics based on, real-world data.
So it's not just about like building a tool and setting it loose. It's about constantly evaluating and improving it to make sure it's, as effective as possible.
Right, because language is constantly evolving. New
Mhm.
persuasive techniques emerge and old ones get tweaked. The tool needs to be able to adapt to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's like this arms race between, the folks that want to persuade us and the folks that want to help us like see through their tactics.
It's a fascinating battle of wits, and the stakes are high because the information landscape is only getting, more complex and overwhelming.
Totally. Okay, speaking of which, before the break, we were starting to like build our own little mental toolkit for spotting propaganda, right? We talked
Yeah.
about emotional language, reframing. What other tricks should we be on the lookout for?
Well, one technique to be aware of is the use of presuppositions.
Presupposition.
Yeah, these are sneaky little assumptions that are like baked into the way something is phrased.
Okay, that sounds complicated. Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine a headline that says, the shocking truth about the government's new healthcare plan.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. Like it's already assuming that there is a shocking truth, before even telling me what it is.
Mm. Exactly. It's planting a seed of doubt or suspicion without actually, providing any evidence.
Right.
Another example might be a statement like, even the opposition agrees that this policy is necessary.
So it's like they're trying to like borrow credibility by suggesting that everyone, even their opponents, is like on board with their idea.
You got it. It's a way of creating a false sense of consensus or inevitability.
Yeah.
So when you encounter a statement like that, ask yourself, is this really true? Is there evidence to support this claim?
Right.
Don't just accept it at face value.
Yeah, it's like we need to become like fact checkers of our own minds,
Right.
constantly questioning what we're being told and looking for evidence to support those claims.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, critical thinking isn't about being cynical or distrusting everything you hear. It's about being discerning, thoughtful, and engaged.
It's about taking ownership of our own beliefs and not letting ourselves be kind of passively swayed by the agendas of others.
Exactly. It's about empowering ourselves to be critical thinkers, not just passive consumers of information.
It's interesting how both of our sources, they kind of seem to agree that while these persuasive techniques can be used for, manipulative purposes, they can also be used for good.
Absolutely. It all comes down to intention. Think about public service announcements designed to, promote healthy habits or encourage people to vote.
Right.
They often use the same persuasive techniques we've been discussing. But in those cases, the goal is to benefit individuals and society as a whole.
So it's not about demonizing persuasive language altogether.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that it's a powerful tool that can be used for, both good and bad.
Exactly. It's like fire. It can be used to cook food or it can be used to destroy a forest.
Right.
It all depends on how it's wielded.
And that brings us back to the importance of critical thinking.
Right.
We need to be able to discern the difference between persuasion that's intended to benefit us
Right.
and persuasion that's intended to, manipulate us.
That's the key. It's about developing a keen sense of awareness, a discerning eye, and a healthy dose of skepticism.
I'm starting to feel like I'm building like a whole new mental operating system here.
Yeah.
One that's more resistant to those sneaky attempts to like hijack my thoughts and beliefs.
That's a great way to think about it. It's an ongoing process, but the more you practice these skills, the more you'll be able to navigate the world of information with confidence and clarity.
Well, before we get too carried away with our newfound mental superpowers, let's take another quick pause. When we come back, we'll explore some real-world examples of these techniques in action, and we'll discuss how these skills can help us navigate the increasingly complex world of information. Stay with us, deep divers. We'll be right back. We are back, deep divers, for the final part of our propaganda deep dive. And, before the break, we were talking about how even, like, good causes, they can use persuasive techniques.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not all doom and gloom manipulation out there, right?
Right. Think about those campaigns encouraging people to get vaccinated
Right.
or to donate to disaster relief efforts.
Yeah.
They're using the same tools of persuasion, but the aim is to help people.
Yeah, it makes you realize that it's not just about spotting the techniques, but also understanding the intent behind them.
Exactly. Yeah. Are they trying to nudge you toward a choice that benefits you, or are they twisting the facts to serve their own agenda?
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's where those critical thinking skills become so important. It's like having mental armor, against manipulation.
I like that analogy. And our sources actually offer some pretty cool ideas for how this propaganda detecting technology could evolve.
Yeah, the technical source talks about future enhancements, which that sounds super sci-fi to me.
Yeah.
Right.
One idea is to let users customize the heuristics.
Oh, interesting.
So you could focus on specific techniques that you're most concerned about.
Okay.
Like maybe you're really good at spotting emotional language, but you need more help with presuppositions.
That's cool. It's like building your own personalized propaganda defense system.
Right.
What else did they mention?
They also talked about creating a collaborative platform
Okay.
where people could contribute their own heuristics.
Oh, wow.
So it'd be like a crowdsourced database of persuasive tactics, constantly evolving as people identify new ones.
It's fascinating how technology can be used to empower people, to make them more aware and informed.
Absolutely. But now I'm curious,
Yeah.
what feature would you add to this tool?
Ooh, that's a good question. If I could wave my magic wand, I think I would create something called the propaganda timeline.
A propaganda timeline.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Okay, so imagine you're, reading a news article, you're watching a video. This feature would analyze the content and then visually map out how the argument unfolds over time.
Okay.
So it would highlight things like shifts in tone,
Right.
introduction of new evidence, use of emotional appeals, even point out logical fallacies.
Just like creating a roadmap
Yeah,
of the persuasive journey they're taking you on.
exactly. And then you can see all the twists and turns,
Right.
the peaks and valleys of emotion.
Right.
And then decide for yourself, is the destination even worth the trek?
Yeah, it would help people understand not just what is being said,
Right.
but how it's being said
Exactly.
to influence their thinking.
Influence their thinking, yeah.
That's brilliant. It would be a game changer for media literacy.
Well, folks, it seems we have reached the end of our propaganda deep dive.
It has been a journey.
It has. We've unpacked all the techniques,
Yeah.
explored the ethical dilemmas.
Yeah.
We've even dreamt up some futuristic features for, combating manipulation.
And hopefully you're feeling a little more equipped to navigate the world of information, armed with your newfound critical thinking skills.
Yes. Remember, it's not about being suspicious of everything you hear.
Right.
It's about being an active, engaged participant in the information exchange.
Question assumptions. Seek evidence. And most importantly, form your own opinions based on reasoned analysis.
So the next time you encounter a message that feels designed to, sway your thinking, take a moment to pause.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, what techniques are being used here? What's the intent behind this message?
And then decide for yourself if it's a message worth believing.
Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and keep those persuasion detectors on high alert.